everyone. Welcome back to Nobody Told Us. I'm really excited about this episode, specifically because I've been thinking a lot about this topic since I moved to Finland. We won't have the camera on in this occasion, but listen up because this is going to be very relatable and especially for women job seekers out there. But today we have Seikkanen, who has an incredible career journey here in Finland. She comes from the US and is working as a marketing expert for a data company. Is that correct, Em?
Yep, I am marketing and communications. I was in marketing for like about 10 years when I started. And it's a really kind of interesting and heavy product to market. So that was kind of what really drove my interest in this position, like specifically. Now, when I started uni, it was kind of right before, this housing market crash in the US. I know that in Finland, at least, there was a similar market crash in around the same time when like Nokia really had to downsize. So at the time, I was majoring in English language, kind of focusing on creative writing and literature, and I had a double major in gender studies. So then, when all of that kind of happened, I decided that maybe marketing would be a more practical um, career choice. Um, since I really kind of enjoyed what I was studying, but I knew that it wasn't very practical and wasn't going to end up paying the bills. And at that point, I had already decided that I would like to have an international career. And my studies, especially in the gender studies, were kind of focused on like issues that are prevalent in many places, but my focus was more on what is happening in the US. So that wouldn't have been very transferable internationally.
Super interesting stories. What can you recommend to people listening if they want to change from whatever they have been studying or doing until now, if they want to get into marketing?
I would say like focus on if you really want to work in marketing, I would say probably are you sure or why? This is one of the sectors that is really kind of getting quickly outsourced and outpaced with the generative AI. So I would make sure that you have like a very strong technical skill set and really learn a MarTech stack, understand the maths behind like how to grow a market, enter a market, and to kind of really focus on networking, especially in Finland. I'm a member of a community called the Awesome Marketers, which is it's a community by international marketers for international marketers, and so that was a place where I was able to start really networking. And I would say try to maybe figure out how to adapt your skill set and your profile and continuously learn to keep your skill set relevant for the current market.
I think that's great, and it actually applies to many other industries. If I understand how fast-paced this AI environment topic is growing, what makes you feel like you can continue in this industry, specifically with all your story, which you have told us a little bit before joining this episode? What motivates you every single day to continue in this path?
Oh, that's a really great question. I think mm, being in tech marketing, B2B tech, I think is really kind of an interesting place to be right now. Just how much you need to really learn about like your product and the like subfield that you market in or the subfield that you operate in order to continue um, to 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 grow as a business, as a company. Sometimes it feels like um, we want people to use this product and really, really grow. That's kind of why I really enjoy B2B tech marketing, because in my life and my values, I'm quite anti-consumption. I like to buy secondhand clothes. I'm vegan. I try to live kind of minimally and just enjoy the nature we have while we have it. So working to kind of contribute to a society that upholds these values is really kind of motivational for me. And I feel like in Finland, everywhere I go, it's pretty easy to find like a vegan meal, even if it's not, super gourmet all the time. It's easy to find the things to cook vegan at home, and just the nature and the water are so beautiful. We're recording this on a beautiful afternoon, and I've been working all day, and for me, it's a little bit hard to even focus because I'm so excited to get out and just enjoy all the greenery that's in my very own backyard.
I feel you. It's super nice to have summer finally
Yeah.
here, and we have to enjoy it to the fullest. Can you tell us a little bit about your story that how did you end up in Finland from the US?
Yeah. So I actually left the US going on 10 years ago now. I was in graduate school, and my focus was on kind of this discourse in online spaces. At the time when I was in grad school, I was in the gender studies program, and I was studying like masculinity and like expressions of this in online space and the rise of the far right in the US. So when Trump said he was running for president, I decided that I would move abroad. And so I originally moved to Turkey, and there I built a brand for an educational consultancy, and I was also teaching business English and academic English as a foreign language, doing some test prep for the IELTS and for the TOEFL exam. And from there, the time I was in Turkey was like 2015, 2016, and the political environment became a bit more tumultuous while I was there. So at the end of 2016, I decided to move to um, like Germany, and I ended up working at a journalism firm in Berlin. And shortly after I started working there, I met my ex-husband, and I was there about a year. And then for his work, we ended up getting married so that we could move to Malta. And then after Malta did not fully agree with us, I will say. So we ended up moving to Finland after a little bit less than a year. So I've been in Finland since then, and it took some adaptation to get used to Finland after that journey, but I've been really like happy here. It's nice how well things work. I feel like I can live comfortably and minimally, and I have a Finnish partner and a Finnish rescue dog. Well, he was not originally from Finland, but he's Finnish now, and his naturalization was actually quite easy, just €80 at the vet, and now he's Finnish. And we have a cat as well, so I'm pretty established here, and I've been quite happy.
That's very nice and very easy for the dog, I can say.
Yeah, he didn't have to learn Finnish, but he
Exactly.
speaks enough. He can answer his commands in Finnish.
That's good. And do you think that's a very good motivation to kind of continue giving your best every day? The fact that you're already super established, or are there
I
other?
wouldn't I wouldn't even call myself super established. I feel like there's more every day that I can do to like I feel like this process of cultural integration, it doesn't necessarily ever end, right?
Mhm.
Like you will always be from here, not from here.
Yeah, I understand that. And that brings me and reminds me of Nordic Inclusify. This is a organization that helps fill or created a feeling of belonging in workplaces, correct? Could you tell us a little bit more about your experience?
Yes, so I'm now an outgoing board member for Nordic Inclusify, but Nordic Inclusify is a nonprofit organization dedicated to kind of creating or minimizing implicit bias in recruitment, talent attraction, employer branding, and to kind of help support diversity in these processes. And that's not just like, you think of diversity, you think of international professionals, you think of women, sometimes in tech especially, you think of LGBTQ, but that's not the only things that constitute diversity, right? Like Nordic Inclusify is also promoting like inclusion for like neuroatypical and disabled individuals in the hiring process, as well as helping to combat ageism, which I think sets in quite early in tech and in Finland, especially maybe in a more pronounced way for women.
Yeah, I had some touch point with Nordic Inclusify as well, and they do super valuable work. Can you give maybe a couple of examples of how they help, Jen?
Well, this year we've put on a bunch of events. We do events both sometimes for job seekers, but we're more focused on trying to help like those individuals working in talent attraction, in recruitment, in employer branding, in HR to combat their implicit biases. So this year we've put together a couple of fireside chats and panel discussions. I believe, Dafne, we had you there earlier this year. And
Yes.
yes, and we had one like last fall about how to kind of reframe disability or being like neuroatypical to have it not be a detriment to um your like recruitment process as an individual job seeker. Sometimes those events for individuals have been better attended, but it's really, really great when we can get more people coming in and actively trying to like help support a more diverse and inclusive workplace.
Yeah, so how, if I want to do something about it, how can I help?
You can follow Nordic Inclusify on LinkedIn. There are also other opportunities and ways to get involved. Finland has a very direct democracy, which means that everybody can vote. And I think perhaps some people don't know this, but if you've been in Finland 2 years as a resident, it doesn't matter if you're on an A permit or a B permit, then you can already vote in a municipal election. There are organizations, for example, Helsinki Left, which is a highly active English language nonprofit association and chapter of the Left Alliance, or Vasemisto, which does a lot to integrate and represent immigrants in Finnish politics. One of the main ways they aim to do this is by getting more immigrants elected in the 2025 municipal elections. So you can even run for these seats if you're an international. Last week, its chair and co-founder, Nick Walters, was announced by the Helsinki District Party as a candidate in Helsinki, and the chapter has also nominated other candidates in Helsinki and Espoo. They hold regular events that are open for anyone to attend, and you can become a member by visiting Helsinki Left Piste Fi, or helsinkileft.fi, rather.
Wow, that's super interesting. I honestly didn't know about that. And now I'm excited to see Rebekka around for our podcast leader. Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I had no idea. Related to that, is this something that you would be part of, or do you find interesting in your upcoming career journey?
Um, I had helped found the chapter of Helsinki Left, but I've recently had to scale back on some of the volunteering I do outside of work, just because I was feeling like I was starting to be a little bit burned out. by all of the like extra stuff I was trying to do to help. And I think that's another thing that's really, really important is that even when you want to help make your community or the society you live and work in a better place, you need to remember to have like self-care. And what does self-care look like? Like for me, it means also having time for friends and family and like my partner and our pets. So like I've had to scale back because I was doing quite a lot. But now I have more like family commitments as well. And
Yeah, that's understandable.
I
Sorry, go
think
ahead.
the other thing you can do like that also includes my friends, right? Like my friends here are my chosen family, and I felt like I didn't really have enough time or energy to truly enjoy the times when I was supposed to be relaxing with my community. But I think it can be kind of hard to make friends in Finland, but finding hobbies, maybe with other internationals or with Finnish friends as well, doing that, working on your friendships as well as your like romantic or dating relationships, if you have them, is really important when you're living like away from where you grew up. Like you don't have your school friends here, probably. I mean, it would be a big coincidence if you did, right? So really trying to put in the hours to develop strong adult friendships can be quite challenging, but very like rewarding. So I would try to do that.
Yeah, that's something that I take with me. It's been a challenge maybe to find the time, especially with juggling everything around. So thank you for that tip. I think it's very important to say that um, finding the correct balance for ourselves, it can be very different from anyone around us. So that's also interesting. I don't know, Rebecca, have you found any experience? Could you tell us in your journey here with your career, have you had to juggle this around too?
I must admit that I'm not so much into volunteering. I admire people who do that and who find the time for that. But I think what I've learned for Finland is what really helps you get connected to people is have a child or have a dog kind of thing. If you want to break it down, let's say in a very simple thing, like that's how you meet people, that's how you get that's how you can start conversations. But of course, I mean, don't get a dog, especially don't get a kid just for that purpose.
Yeah,
But find something that connects. I think it kind of breaks down what Em also said. Like,
yeah. So I'm not sure if my dog actually helped my friendships because he's a rescue and he can be very picky about who he thinks is a friend, especially like I can't have certain friends in my house and not too many people because he gets anxious. So like for that reason, I would say getting a dog or a cat or any type of pet here can be quite a challenge. So maybe um, it's probably better to try to find people not through other living creatures.
That makes me wonder a little bit about, for example, is it befriending, making friends at your workplace? Is that something that's in your common practices? Do you like having them as friends, or do you like having a professional like boundary?
Mm. I like, well, where I work now, we have a lot of hobby clubs and activities, and that's really, really nice. I would say that the workplace is a great place to make friends and really find people to help you feel more established. So, like, I know that if I really had like a question, like if I got some letter in Finnish, I could probably ask a colleague for help to understand what it says. But I think that's also a little bit cultural. Like for me, coming from the US, we have kind of a very strong, to have work-life balance means a strong divide between your work life and your non-work life. Here, it kind of just means you have enough break time. It seems like people bring like more of themselves to work, and that comes a lot more naturally. So, I mean, I think taking into account those cultural differences and what you are comfortable with is also important. But at the same time, when I was living and working in Turkey, it seemed like there was even a lot more of the personal life at work sometimes. Like sometimes I felt like I was the only person at the office. who wasn't like in a relationship with a colleague. So if you go to dinner with the whole team, then, maybe there's two of you who are either single or have a partner at home who doesn't work there, but everybody else kind of is paired up a little bit. But maybe that was just my workplace. I don't know. I kind of I like the way it is in Finland where you can kind of bring all of yourself to the workplace. So that is a nice thing.
Yeah, that's true. I've noticed that as well, and I feel it makes it much easier to form relationships with coworkers.
But I feel like it's easy to be friends with my colleagues, but it's me who needs to get over this like hurdle. Like especially in the field I'm in, like you learn to be like very like professional at work. And so trying to figure out how to bring more of yourself to work was hard at first.
Yeah, that would be my question. How did you manage that? Can you give some tips or strategies for our listeners that how can they connect with their colleagues, or let's say with their Finnish colleagues, and how can they kind of adapt to that more Finnish working culture?
I think if you drink of a beer with your colleagues, try to go work at the office because a lot of us have very like flexible remote work type remote agreements or where it's like kind of hybrid and sometimes it's easier to work from home. But when I know that there's a lot of colleagues in the office, unless I have something really deep and pressing that needs a lot of like deep focus, I will try to go to the office and get to know my colleagues. In my company, we also have some random Slack channel where we can share kind of snippets of what we are doing outside of work. We had a lot of people sharing like midsummer photos. We've also got like other Slack channels with other like departments in our parent company that have like dogs or cats where we can share photos of our kids, as it were. I maybe they have one also for human children, but I don't have human children. I wouldn't be a member of those channels. And then if your workplace offers like hobby clubs, try to join something. Some workplaces will have like a particular colleague whose job it is to kind of plan some stuff. Try to join those every once in a while. Hang out with your colleagues when you can. For me, I also try to like volunteer if there's something like when we have an on-site day, our team is kind of distributed through different countries and different cities in Finland. So when we have an on-site day in Helsinki, I volunteer to like organize the meals just to kind of help pick like where we can get dinner or just kind of show colleagues who live in other places what I love about my city. So that is one thing that you can do.
I'm I'm really curious to know what happens in the situation where you meet some new colleague and they ask you about your last name since it sounds so Finnish. What's your response there?
People don't normally ask me about my surname at work. If they do, I tell them my ex is Finnish, and I think that is maybe, I guess I'm doing air quotes here, you can't really see them, but like woman privilege, people assume that it's my ex's surname and it's not. I had a falling out with my dad's family and I couldn't bear the thought of sharing my surname with some of them, so I changed my name. But it was kind of shocking when I did because I had been in Finland about 11 months when I decided to change my name, and I had the same amount of invitations to interview with a Finnish surname in 1 month as I had in the previous 11 months as a job seeker. I was surprised, and at the time, in a very practical sense, I was quite pleased, but it was like really disheartening. Nobody should have to change their name. Nobody should have to have a Finnish name to get a job interview. That's very crazy. Before I had the Finnish name, my father's family is Italian American, and I would call as like I would pick up the phone and call a prospective employer and ask them like questions about the job. That's a good practice if you're job searching. But when people would hear my voice, they'd ask me if I was like a native English speaker. I've been asked if my surname was Italian during a job search, and that's actually illegal to ask that question, or at least it was. I know that the current administration is changing quite a bit, but that wasn't like a legal question to be asked by a recruiter at the time. So I don't speak Italian. I grew up in New York. There's loads of Italian Americans there, and I would say a great deal of them don't speak Italian. So, like, my grandparents were born in my hometown in upstate New York, in Western New York. Like, I don't speak Italian. I've only ever spoken English with both of my parents, and that was a bit of a shock that my surname was going to be like something that people would ask about in that way, I guess.
Yeah, it is actually illegal to kind of ask any question related to origin, maybe, ethnicity and so on. The
Yeah,
only thing where it is relevant is if we need to find out if you have the legal right to work in Finland, so we can ask for that,
but
because obviously you need that. But that is
that is
not
a little card. That's not asking me about my name.
exactly. It's not asking about the name. It's asking about your work permit.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's super super sad, to be
yeah,
honest. And I hear that a lot. And I often talk to people who think actually about changing their name, but only for that reason, to find a job in Finland. And it makes me really
yeah,
sad that people actually have to think about this. I do understand the motivations and the situation, but
yeah. Mm, I would say that's not a good enough reason to
mm,
change your name. The types of things that made me want to not carry my father's name were like very, very sad and heavy.
Taking it back a little bit to your last name now and how you approach job seeking, and you were mentioning just right now that compared to 11 months before you changed your last name, the amount of maybe job interviews you received was an incredible amount of difference. But
Yeah.
for people listening, and you just said, I don't recommend it, just changing your last name just because of getting a job interview, which is correct.
No,
It's
because
actually,
changing your name kind of when you do it for a reason like that, like mm, it kind of made me think about like identity in new ways. Like if you are much closer with your family, I think you might feel more of a loss to have changed your surname. I did not feel that at all. I felt free when I changed my name. I mean, really kind of think about like, is this going to be like worth it? Is this going to challenge your identity in some way? I would say you shouldn't have to change your name to find a job here, but I do understand that it's kind of becoming a more desperate situation for many. I think there was an article in ULA just published today about that very issue.
maybe, of course, we're on a bit theoretical basis, but we do have decision makers from Finnish companies listening as well to this. So, in your opinion, what can Finnish companies do better when it comes to hiring immigrants and also retaining, so meaning keeping immigrants as their employees?
I think mm, on top of all of the responsibilities that I have at work, I have had to deal continuously with just making sure that I'm following all the rules for the like Finnish immigration system. And I'm sure there are decision makers who will hear that and be like, good, people need to be doing that. But if they're like kind of working in this capital area, they know and care about someone who has this huge stressful thing on top of all the work that they have to do. And it's scary to feel like just one decision from this big agency can mean that like you'd have to uproot your life and go move somewhere else, isn't it?
Mm,
Like that's really, really scary. And it's kind of I don't want to say distracting, but it can be if your international friends are talking about this around or with you, that's a good thing. That's a compliment. It can be upsetting to know about it, but um, if you're not hearing about it and you have like international colleagues, maybe ask how they're doing, ask how that's going. But if they don't or can't answer, maybe examine your own speech and behavior around these colleagues to Maybe you've inadvertently said something that can come off as kind of a microaggression against a colleague who is international.
That is very kind and mindful to kind of approach it this way. Sometimes
Yes.
we don't know what we're actually putting out there, especially if we're focused on work and it's just coming up naturally when things just
Yeah.
happen. But in a way, it's also good that we are creating this safe space for people like us to put this word out there, and hopefully those hiring managers or leaders that are listening to us can take a little bit from this. I'm thinking about Rebekka now. Is there anything like that comes to your mind of what we've mentioned? Changing the name, integration, belonging, and of course, it's a huge topic, but that you live in your day by day as a recruiter, that you could.
Well, yeah, of course, I myself, for example, I never look at any name or try to not look at any picture when I start reading resumes, just to kind of, keep any kind of chance of unconscious bias that we all have at bay, I have to say. But yeah, of course, okay, I can focus on what I do myself.
Yes.
As I said, I tried not to look at names or pictures. Also, when I discuss with my hiring managers, I try to always bring the conversation back to skills, background, rather than any questions about other things that are not relevant to doing the job. But as I said, yeah, that's important, I think, and I think that's the way that we can change something kind of in our own environment. But yeah, I feel that I'm working actually already in an environment, I'm super happy about that, where things don't really matter so much. So
Yeah, I
I'm
can
really
see
glad about this, but I think that's not the rule.
it talks a lot about the leaders. So that's really good. We can learn a lot about these workplaces, of course. And also, I'm really grateful that we are able to bring up this conversation and many different topics. But at the same time, thank you for sharing your story. Is there anything specifically you would like to promote or tell people that they should look into?
I would say probably just the Helsinki Left and the Nordic Inclusify. I'm really kind of excited to follow what those two organizations will do moving forward.
Yeah, we will put the links definitely in the notes so you can check them out. And then to conclude this, a question that we ask from everyone. What is something that nobody told you before you came to Finland, but you feel would have been useful to know?
Isn't, I would say, being a bit more reserved and really trying to get to know everyone there and having a conversation rather than like pinpointing like the key decision maker of that, like, or the like key like recruiter or hiring manager in a networking situation is important. I think being a little bit more like relaxed and subdued in how you present yourself in networking situations, because coming from the US, at least for me, you learn as a woman professional, it's important to be assertive, but not so assertive that you come off as abrasive. And I think that is even a little bit assertive can be a little bit abrasive in Finland sometimes. So I would say focus on the kind of cultural integration, because that will kind of help you fit in the most in those like job seeking situations. And wear sunscreen. You can still get a sunburn even though you're like practically at the North Pole. Even if you don't normally sunburn, it can happen.
Those are really great tips. I really appreciate that perspective because yes, this is so true. Thank you very much for sharing this perspective with us. Huge words. I really love how your vocabulary is so well or so professional. I take a lot from this today. Rebekka, any last words to leave the audience thinking?
No, thank you so much. It was really nice.
Yeah,
Thank you
of
so
course.
much.
I can't wait to hear it. And I'm excited to hear what other tips nobody's been told, but that they figured out.
Definitely. Thank you much, everyone, and see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.